Good morning. So it's a privilege for me to introduce Alex and Jackie Cooke. And Alex and Jackie took over Love Russia, an organization that works with orphans since 1999. Both of them became Christians on the same night. I was just talking with Jackie about that in 1991. They made a commitment to the Lord. And Alex's career was also hijacked. He 15 years had working with race cars, and I think it was 1 year he was the crew chief out in Sacramento. So if anybody's into that high-speed stuff, talk with Alex. What is interesting, though, I love the way God merges, because Alex is on as he calls, a friend-raising trip. He's not on a fundraising, he's a friend. He wants to make connections with people here. But one of the things he has done fundraising, and some of them are pretty interesting. Like, they had the Harley-Davidson team go all over Russia on the bikes. He just got back. I think it was this year he was up in the Arctic Circle doing a fundraising on the bikes. So he's kind of merged the two together nicely. But they live in the UK. They have five children, 4 children right now. They did lose a child who was 15 years of age. And I know that was very difficult and part of the reason why they're in ministry. And Alex will share about that, both Alex and Jackie. And one of the things is I met them in 2003. I was part of a team. We were going over to Russia. And Alex is amazing because when I first met him, he literally, we come to a complete roadblock. We had a full team of 16 people going over to Russia, and yet we had no permission from the authorities to enter into Russia with the orphanage or anything. And this one friend, Steve Balama, he said, why don't you get in touch with Alex? I know he can do something. He got in touch, had a personal visit with the Minister of Education in Roseanne, and literally saved our skin and enabled that whole trip went off. And then a couple of years later, I'm calling him again. Alex, I'm in a bit of a fix again. So once again, he works his magic. And so I would like to even just say publicly, thank you for being there so many times for our teams. You really did help out many times. And but it was amazing. Alex is one of those few people that when you make a phone call to a CEO of an organization, he's one of the few people you'll actually get an answer. Always. I could call him right. If someone called him, he'd answer and say, I'll talk to you later. But he will answer. And it's unbelievable. So I've actually adopted that policy with communication. So without any further ado, I'd really like to bring up Alex and Jackie here, and just if you can give them a warm welcome.
If you believe that, you'll believe anything. I'm just a regular guy that's been given an opportunity to do a big job. As Keith has probably given you most of the background, I won't bore you with the details now, other than to apologize for my accent, but it's English. Okay? If anybody has a problem with that, come and see me afterwards. We'll explain what the words mean in our dictionary. So let's go straight into what we're about. James reminds us that there's a quote there that says, suppose there are brothers or sisters who don't have clothes or enough to eat. What good is there in saying God bless you if you don't give them the necessities of life? One of my first visits to Russia, I was taken to an orphanage and I was shown children sitting in their own urine because the authorities there didn't have the proper facilities to make those children comfortable. Keith mentioned the fact that I used to build race cars. I have an engineer-type mentality. I like things in straight lines. I like things to fit. I like things to be tidy. And so this seemed untidy. It didn't fit and it didn't work. So we put in a program of providing diapers. We call them nappies, but you call them diapers. I checked the word out. So this is where we really started, going to different baby homes and putting in a program where donors could provide money to buy diapers, disposable diapers. So as you can see, I started right from the bottom and I've worked up from there. That doesn't always work in America, I must admit. Oh, I'm sorry. Very good, sir. Thank you. Is that better? Yes. Oh, okay. All right. So, moving on from there, we were taken to different orphanages. Keith mentioned the fact that we had a relationship with the Minister of Education. Initially, when we first arrived, the guy couldn't believe that we actually wanted to do something without payback. In Russia, everything is what's in it for me. I apologise if there are any Russian people here, but that's been my experience since 1999. We went to the orphanages, we found things like this, damp walls and peeling wallpaper in the bedrooms, because the roof leaked. They hadn't got the money to fix the roof, let alone fix the bedrooms. By working together with them, building a sense of trust and cooperation, we were able to change those rooms, working with the staff and local tradespeople. We didn't take in our team and say, stand aside, we know best. We encouraged them to work with us, but strictly on a 50-50 basis. We did not go in and do the whole thing. We wanted them to have ownership. We wanted them to lead the project. We wanted them to feel that we were helping, not pushing them out the way. It's hard to believe that perhaps a children's home would have open sewers as toilets, but that's what we found in Yulatma. In Skopin, they had the same thing, but on our 50-50 program, we were able to work through the local authorities and ensure that we could improve the conditions. It's very important in Russia that you don't cause them to lose face. I know you're all thinking about going out into the mission field. Please bear that in mind. Every country you go to has got their own rules, their own culture. And if you make them look dumb or stupid because yours is better, it won't help. In Riash College, we took an old storeroom and turned it into a modern set of shower stalls. There were 70 students, teenage students in this college, and all they had was cold water in a sink. That was the only washing facilities they had. In Pronsk, we went, and here, again, very, very poor conditions for the children. These are all capital projects that we've taken on. And even as late as this year in April, when I was in Russia at Poshipova College, a college for over 500 students, they're down to 60. And the conditions there are very, very primitive. We'd like to make sure that that improves. The old Minister of Education retired, and he has now become the executive director at this college. We feel that he's the right man for the job, and we're going to try and get as much support for him as possible. Children always gather round. Children are curious. Unlike Keith, I don't have the same level of Russian as he does, but I can get by. I don't know about all the other languages. But the children want to practice their English. They might have 3 words, but they'll try them out on you, make sure that they've got it right. And we've already agreed with, we've agreed with Dr. Isaac that we're going to bring him over to England and improve his English as well. I'm going to introduce my wife, Jackie. Jackie stood beside me for the last 14 years in this ministry, and she has a real heart for orphanage aftercare. Hang on, you'll want to see. I'll get back to you all later.
I just want to start what I'm going to say with some words from Psalm 71. We actually heard these the other day on Sunday in a service that we were speaking in. We'd spoken to a Sunday school class there. And when we heard them, we thought, wow, that's exactly where we're at the moment. So I'll start at 17. Since my youth, O God, you have taught me, and to this day I declare your marvellous deeds. Even when I am old and grey, that's us. Do not forsake me, O God, till I declare your power to the next generation. That's you and the people we minister to. Your might to all who are to come. Orphanage aftercare is what's on our hearts now. We've retired from Love Russia UK. So the ministry you've seen, which was a tiny, tiny part of it, is no longer ours. We've passed that on to a wonderful Christian lady who is going to do great things and move it in different directions, because that is what is needed now. But Love Russia USA, which was started in 2005, have said to us, well, where do we go? They're a separate organisation, and they're looking at transitioning into taking a slightly different direction from the UK, and they want to work with the aftercare. In Matthew, it says, Lord, if you are willing. So we're saying, Lord, we're willing. Where do you want us to go? And one of the areas we really feel strongly about is children coming out of orphanages in different ways. One of those ways is if they are adopted. Now, thousands, absolutely thousands of children have been adopted into America from Russia. And we know many of those wonderful Christian parents who took those children and brought them over here. And they have worked with those children who come with a massive amount of baggage, lots and lots of trauma. There's been all sorts of incidents. And it doesn't matter whether you have the child at 18 months or 2 years, or you took the child when they were older, there's always all this stuff to come out. A lot of those groups of people have sort of, excuse me, I've got to sneeze. Excuse me. have created support groups and done a lot of work. Last year, I think it was last year, Putin signed to say that no more Americans could adopt from Russia. Incidentally, it's been very difficult in parts of Europe for a long time. In Britain, it's been very difficult to adopt from Russia for many, many years. But God looked at that and opened some more doors, as always. And Russian evangelical Christians are adopting children out of orphanages and creating almost in their own homes mini orphanages. For instance, the family you can see at the moment is Pastor Peter, Leah, and their current family. Every one of those children there, except one, are adopted. They are an amazing people. They have fostered and adopted over the years many, many children, but they now see that adoption is the way to go. Because once you've adopted a child, you don't get any more support from the government, and in fact, the amount of support they got is very, very minimal in comparison to what you'd get here. So what we would like to do, and we're talking to groups of Christians in this country who have adopted and learned how to deal with children with all this trauma, is, I think you say, play it forward, pay forward, wherever it is. And you know what I mean. And we would like to bring those skills back to these Russian Christian families. There's an enormous hole that these children are falling into, because when they leave orphanage, they are so vulnerable to so many influences. This is Natalie and her children. 2 of the children there are her own. Her husband left her when she'd got her second child as a baby and left her on her own. She's a Christian. One day, she was in a hospital with one of her children, and she saw the door to the dying room open. Don't know if you know that there are dying rooms in Russian hospitals. Do you know this, Keith? No. And they put the children in that room who they think are not going to make it. Could be because the budget's run out for that child and they no longer have a budget for that child's medications. Many doctors have talked to us about this in Russia, so we do know it's so. And she heard this little noise, a bit like a kitten, so she went in and saw a cot with a tiny little baby about the size of my hand in, very premature. And she said to the nurses, "Why is that baby here? Why isn't it being cared for? Why isn't it in an incubator or whatever?" And they said, "Well, it won't make it. This child won't make it. He's too small. He will be brain damaged." So it's, you know, they've said they don't want to spend the money. Parents didn't want the child. And Natalia just said, "Can I have him?" And they said, "Well, it's not going to live." She said, "But I'd like to love him till he dies." So they allowed her to take him home. Can you imagine that here? Can you imagine going to hospital and picking up a scrap and just taking it home? I mean, it's just beyond belief. She took him home, wrapped him up in cotton wool, got a pipette, and started drip feeding him. Every few minutes, she just gave him a little bit more. Her children, who are all adopted, except for her own two, helped her. They looked after each other so that she could just sit and feed this little baby. Anyway, he's survived. You can see him. In this picture, he's 3 years old. He's an absolute terror. He never stops. Like a whirlwind he is. When they're 4 years old, they have to go for tests and to see whether what type of school they'll go to. The schools are numbered as to how intelligent the child is. And he went for his test, and they said, "Well, he's absolutely normal, so he can just go to a normal school." That's God's grace, that child is meant to live something wonderful. That child is in God's hands to do. Michael, Galena and family. Michael's a pastor. The only child there that is actually biologically theirs is the little girl in front, whose name's completely gone out of my head, Cornelia. And the others are all adopted. Again, he's a pastor. He is not well paid, has very little money, but they are doing the best they can. Gatchner families, you'll see Natalia there. These are other families who live close to her, all Christians who have taken all these children into their homes. So what we did with Love Russia UK was we took all the children and their parents to Estonia, to a camp, and ministered to the children, but also to the parents. The camp teams are made up of British, American, French, Estonian and Russian people to look after them. And keep going, so it doesn't mean anything. And we did all the normal things you do in a summer camp. You know what you do in a summer camp. In England, we have to put lots of pictures because they don't know what goes on in summer camps because it's not part of the English tradition. But one of the things we did extra was we studied ecology, because in Russia, ecology is going around picking up litter and not actually knowing about the world and what is best for the world. They absolutely loved it. We did teenage discussion groups where our teenagers, by ours I mean whatever nationality, went into a room with their teenagers, and we said to their teenagers, "You can ask them anything you like. Anything." I had one or two older people in there just to help in case anything got very difficult. And their youngsters really did ask some sticky questions, but we've said to ours, answer honestly. You know, if there's something you struggle with, answer honestly, and they did. It was revelational to the Russian teenagers because they are still being taught, you do not do this. The Bible says you mustn't do it, full stop. And so they thought nobody else struggled. And all of a sudden, there was the realization that it's not easy for anybody. Their parents said, their carers and parents said to us, well, you've just shown us something that perhaps we need to think about the way we're presenting the Bible to these children. Because, you know, they need to understand. We're just saying, do it, because that's what you do in Russia. You just say do it and you expect it to do it. Wonderful to worship with the children and with the carers. And the other side of that is we worked with the caregivers. Sandra or Keith worked with them 1 year for us and was talking to them about different ways of loving children. This was totally new. And this is where we realised that this is a massive hole that these carers, caregivers, parents need the support and to understand how they can deal with these children in a different way. We took clothes for the carers as well, because if you've got 10 children and no money, you're going to spend every penny on the children and not on yourself. And it's another way of showing God's love to them, that we respect them for what they're doing, for what they're trying to do. Memory books, are they important or are they not? When somebody who 10 years ago you worked with in a summer camp comes up to you in the street and says, "You're those people who came. We've still got your picture, and every time life is tough, we open to that page and say, yes, I can get through it because they told me so. They told me that God is there for me, not just for others, that Jesus is here." So any of you could go on a camp, or you could start looking with us at ways of filling the gaps in these children's lives by taking the information back to Russia to work with the caregivers. Sorry.
Okay, I'm aware that we're getting short on time, so I'll maybe just rattle through this a little bit quickly, but we can discuss this in a lot more detail if you would like to come and join us over lunch. Katya was a young lady that was beaten by her father, and yet there you can see the picture of her when she was brought into care. As she developed as a young woman, we were able to put her onto a program called the Genesis program. This is a program that we provided. It started in the year 2000 when I was originally approached and told that there were 8 children leaving the orphanage that particular summer. Would I give them $50 each so that they could go and buy a winter coat, winter boots, a fork, a spoon and a plate? That's what they were leaving with to go out into the world. We figured we could do something a bit better, and we set up a program where they could actually receive $50 a month, provided they checked in with a supervisor. It also kept them away from the idea of prostitution and criminal activities. The life expectancy for a girl leaving orphanage in Russia at the time was 25. The boys, if they left at 16, had a 2-year gap before they went in the military. Boys being boys got into all sorts of stuff. So we figured if we could persuade them and encourage them to go to college, then they had a better chance in life. These are just some of the young people that we've worked with. Andrea and Zhenya. Marina is their supervisor. The lady on the right is Debbie. She's my successor. Genesis program that started with 8, this year has 41 students in Ryazan and 38 students in St. Petersburg. We've taken the model from Ryazan, transposed that into St. Petersburg, and we now have a program running there as well. Alexander is just one of those young guys that instead of going into just catering, because catering is the most popular choice for orphans because they know what it's like to go without food. So if you're going to get a job in life, go work in a kitchen. Theory is that you won't ever be hungry again. But he's gone one stage further. He's going into hotel management. Since 2001, 756 students have gone through our program, and we have a 96% success rate of them integrating into society. Official figures are that 9% of students leaving orphanage between 16 and 18 years of age will succeed. 9%. 11% will suicide, and 80% will end up with drugs or criminal-related situations. Olga studied catering. She went to college, met her future husband. They now have a restaurant. Tanya, actually, when she was 14, her mother's boyfriend shot her mother, her sister, and missed Tanya, but then turned the gun on himself. We were asked if we could help. We helped her to go to college, and she is now working as a PA in Rizan, a personal assistant to a multinational. But you'll see also she wears a cross. She is a believer. Anastasia started law school, and her father was killed in a car accident. We were able to help her get through law school. She now specialises in orphan-related cases. Sergei lived in institutions since he was 11. When his parents died, he ran around the local village asking people to take him in, and nobody would. That's why he ended up in care. He's now studying to be a motor vehicle mechanic. Pavel and Anastasia met on the program. They're saving to get married. Students at the Teachers College in St. Petersburg. Over 40 students there are orphans, and we're supporting at least 38 of them. Victor is the guy in the green T-shirt on the right-hand side of the picture. He's been through the Genesis program, studied as a soccer coach, and has now got together a team of local boys from orphanage, and they take on other orphanages. And through his ministry, he's sharing the Bible with them, and believe it or not, he's using the Bible as the playbook for his soccer team. That takes some believing, but I believe that he's worked out a way of doing it. Maybe it just works in Russian more than it does in English. We have seminars once a month for them, skill sharing seminars, life coaching. Pastor Slava, with Debbie there, he is the prime mover in the life coaching skills. Another pastor that we work with is Sergei, and he has 2 transition homes and working on a 3rd transition home for the young people. So Love Russia USA, what are we about? We believe the natural extension of God's care through life to orphans and the disadvantaged in Eastern Europe. Matthew reminds us that, tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. I've been traveling to Russia every 6 weeks for the last 14 years. I believe I've clocked up over 100 visits in that period. As Jackie mentioned earlier, we have retired from the operational day-to-day running of Love Russia in the United Kingdom. I was the CEO and international director for all that period of time. But in June, we gave it up, handed it over to a new team, because we're reminded that there is a season for everything, and we think that our season there has finished. But we believe that the season here in America is only just starting. So that's why we're not fundraising, we're friend-raising. We're asking you to come on board, support us in prayer, and check out our website for updates. The Bible tells us to love one another. By this, all men will know you're my disciples. So please remember the orphaned and needy children. All of you that are going to go out into ministry, we really do pray blessing on your ministry. As Keith mentioned earlier, it was 1991 before I came to the Lord. Before I became a believer, I was 43 years of age. To save you the math, I'm 65 now. I just wish I'd had the opportunity to do what I'm doing now when I was much younger, because I really do believe that we can make a difference in this world. You guys have got pretty much the whole of your life in front of you. You can share that with other people. And Jolinda said earlier that she wants to get into youth ministry. I do believe that's the way forward. If we can share that, our belief, our faith, with what God's done in our lives, then I do surely believe that it will make a difference in the years ahead. It's a long-term plan, but I think it's worth sticking with. Love Russia USA started in 2005 as a non-profit. We have just put up a website. There is a PayPal facility there. If you want to get involved, please check us out.